So for everyone that doesn't know me, my name is Josh. I head up partnerships at Appear here, and have the privilege of hosting this evening. For those of you that don't know Appear here, we're the world's leading place to rent retail space. So you can think of us a bit like Airbnb for retail. Our mission was to create a world where anyone with an idea can find a space to make it happen. And that mission has never felt more relevant than it has today. And we're trying to do everything in our power to support the communities that we work with as we begin to reopen. And that's why we started these what we called underground sessions. They originally started in an underground station. Now, obviously, no longer. We've renamed them under lockdown sessions, and this is our second. And we're very happy to have this amazing panel and you guys join us here. So, the beauty and wellness industry, with its heavy focus and IRL experience, is undergoing rapid change at the moment, unfortunately, due to the COVID crisis. Across the world, both beauty stores and salons have had massively impacted due to the lockdown, and brands needing to adapt fast to changing consumer needs. So both from where they sell and what they sell. But there is a silver lining, however. The beauty and skincare concerns remain high on the list of consumer priorities right now, and visiting salons is actually rated one of the top post-lockdown activities. So on that note, I'd love to introduce our amazing panel who will be sharing their insights on the past, present, and future of this industry. So first, we have Jules Miller. So Jules is the founder of the Noto. Jules is actually a former member of Appear here, and she went on to launch the Noto, the modern antidote to the supplement industry. As of today, Noto's raised $10.5 million in funding, which is amazing. Launched over 20 products, is stocked in over 100 retailers, which includes the likes of Dover Street Market and Kith. And Jules also launched a series of her own pop-ups and plans to expand in 2020.
For sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that intro, Josh, by the way. Probably better than I could have done myself.
No problem, no problem. I promised Sarah I would introduce everyone. So introducing everyone. Sarah is the next person. It's my privilege to introduce. I've known Sarah for a very long time. With more than 10 years experience in the magazine and newspaper publishing, Sarah is one of the industry's most recognizable and respected faces. She's the beauty director of the Sunday Times Style, with her own weekly column, Beauty Boss, a must-read for consumers and industry insiders. And she's also a weekly host on This Morning. So we're very honored to have you here, Sarah.
Thanks, Josh.
Next, joining us from Los Angeles, California, very early in the morning, Gloria Noto, the founder of Noto Botanics. 13 years experience in the industry. Gloria started out as a makeup artist before launching Noto Botanics 4 years ago. The brand mission is to create an all-inclusive, all-natural skincare line that appeals to genders and all genders and identities, which is breaking down barriers between wellness and inclusivity. And last year, Gloria opened her first one in December, opened her first store, which she's sitting in now, which looks absolutely beautiful behind her.
See, very pretty and quiet.
And then last but not least is Giorgia Rossi. Giorgia is the COO of Treatwell. Treatwell, for those of you that are not familiar, is Europe's most popular beauty bookings platform. So Giorgia actually started her own similar venture, a bookings marketplace in New York called Lookbooker, and before joining Treatwell as their COO. And in her role at Treatwell, Giorgia is responsible for partner strategy and oversees sales, customer service, account management teams, who work with 25,000 partners. That's a hell of a lot of partners. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I feel very, very lucky to be sitting here speaking to all of you, and you know, this is really an amazing panel. And I know that we up here have a community of brands and founders and creators, and your thoughts will be very valuable for them tonight. So what I wanted to start with is, you know, from lockdown to sort of reopening where we are now, the last 2 months have been really intense, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kick off by asking, what are the biggest challenges that you faced or have seen so far? And I'll start with Jules, because you're unmuted and I can see you there.
So I think that we've been extremely fortunate in the fact that we're obviously in the business of health and wellness. And so what the pandemic has done for most consumers is really bring health to the forefront of their mindset. And so as soon as this happened, we actually saw an influx in demand. And sort of at the same time as that happened, we started to see huge delays in our supply chain. So that was a challenge. I think whilst it was difficult to navigate and to really think about solutions that we could apply to our supply chain sort of like instantly, what it has done is it's sort of forced us to make decisions that really we should have been making in the first place. So just thinking about localizing our packaging, that's just a very simple example. We actually manufacture our products in the UK and in the US, but 95% of our business comes out of the US, but then all of our packaging comes from Italy. So we've been able to essentially find other suppliers in the US, and what that really does for us long term is obviously just sort of narrow down our carbon footprint. So the challenges for us really have been about logistics, supply chain, but all in all, it's been quite a positive experience for our business in terms of just really starting to think more efficiently. And actually we've stumbled across wins that I think that we wouldn't have ever really had unless we've been really forced to really think about what's absolutely necessary, what's really important to our customers, and how can we get it to them quickly. I think another thing that we've found interesting is that our best-selling products were our gut health products and our skincare products. And that completely flipped as soon as this happened. As you can imagine, our vitamin D and anything to do with immunity sort of just went through the roof. So that basically meant that our forecasting was just completely off. But again, it was all about sort of thinking really quickly. We sat down with our lab. We managed to place an order to really increase our stock volume, and that brought down our cost price. So we actually reduced the prices of our immunity products by 35%. So yeah, like I said, a lot of sort of wins, but yeah, it's been a busy 2 months.
I can imagine. And Giorgia, I'd love to get to you next, because obviously, you know, Treatwell really operates a lot in IRL, as do appear here. I mean, what are the main challenges you guys have been seeing?
I think it's a different version of a similar story, which is, I think we have 25,000 odd partners across Europe, and in the space of, I think it was 11 days, every single government in the markets that we operate basically went into shutdown mode and mandated that all of our partners close down. So we kind of have gone through, I would say, like 3 phases. So the first phase was very much, how can we stand with and support the industry in navigating that uncertainty and sort of make sure that they could shut down in a way that was fair to their clients and meant that they could focus on things that they needed to do very, very quickly to preserve cash flow and to basically make it through. So it was kind of like the first phase. And then the second phase for us was more of an internal phase, which was a chance to kind of do a similar thing, like recalibrate. If we want to come out on this and we want to be the most trusted partner to our industry, what do we need to focus on in the next couple of months, whether that's, you know, certain product features or really ramping up the human support for our salon owners who have so much uncertainty and so many questions, and how can we really, you know, support them in a way that will let them come back on the other side. And I think, like many businesses, we went through a moment of, well, how are we going to preserve cash flow, and what do we need to do to preserve Treatwell to make sure we make it out on the other side as well. So there was a bit of that. And then the third phase, which is thankfully the one we're in at the moment, which is looking to rebuild. So what does it look like to rebuild consumer confidence? So obviously the hair and beauty industry is extremely physical touch, and so we're trying to work out, like, what sort of campaigns or what sort of information do we need to give customers to give them the confidence to return to the salons. How do we enable them to book online, because that's a meta trend that was already happening but we feel like has accelerated through this process. And then on the partner side, we obviously have sadly a bunch of businesses that have gone out of business. So how do we support them as they close down? And for the ones that have been able to open their doors up, how do we make sure their books are filled sort of weeks and weeks in advance? So it kind of feels like we've lived dog years through the last couple of months, and we're definitely not out of the woods, either us or the industry. But it's been a journey.
Yeah. And Gloria, you have just opened a store. You are one of those people. Has that been the biggest challenge for you? Have there been other things that you didn't see coming?
I would say that opening the store in December, while this was all kind of brewing and not realizing it, and then falling into it, and pretty much having to immediately shut our store down, has definitely been an interesting point for me, because we just got started, like we barely just started. So it's been a navigation of what that looks like, letting it go for the moment, and then having to deal with relearning how to run your company during this time, and then what the new protocols will be moving forward. Because technically we can open our store now, but I'm going to wait until June, because I have to think about a few things. I have to think about my employee safety. I have to think about how do you create a store that's supposed to have been initiated to be a community space without allowing your community inside, and just kind of restructuring everything. So in a way, these last 2 months, and very similar to Jules, very similar, has been some of the best months of my business's life, as well as some of the most fire lighting under my ass moments of figuring out efficiency, figuring out how to support my team in a greater way, figuring out what I want my company to look like, because I don't believe personally that this is going to be finished in the next couple of months. I think this is going to be something that we're probably going to live with for the next couple of years, and just kind of renegotiating what that looks like for me, not only as the founder of a company, but for also me as a human being, and how I want to live my life and how I want to run my company. So in a strange way, these last couple of months have felt like one giant blur, as well as getting so much sorted out and figured out. And I'm really grateful to have a mentor that's been working with me almost like right before all this happened. We started working together, and there's been so much investment from outside help that has helped me figure out a lot of these things, which, to be totally honest, had I not had some mentorship during all this, I would probably be in a very different position right now. So asking for help in the right places has been really helpful, and really, taking that moment to observe and really sort of see what's going on as far as all things go, is instead of being totally reactionary. I think that's really been important as well.
That's great. Sarah, you probably come into contact with as many beauty wellness brands as almost anyone. Have you seen the changes there? Have you seen, are there opportunities that present themselves? Have there been major challenges that you've seen with the brands that you work with?
Yeah, look, I think it's a tricky one, because definitely, there's a lot more conversation with lots of different brands. I think for us, it's in a very different situation. Working in print is a tricky thing in itself, and then obviously with all of this, it completely. So sorry, my boyfriend's trying to go to tennis, and he's been crawling to get keys and his tennis racket to not be in shot. So if I look vaguely distracted, he's literally crawled now, so he's leaving now. Right, ready to go. Okay, I can 100% focus now. So yes, I think for us, what we are doing, it's dramatically changing. I think what we're trying to do at Sunday Time Style is actually just accelerate much faster than we planned to with our 7 days of Sunday Time Style. I think in terms of what our content changed overnight. So everything we put in the magazine literally didn't make any sense. One day everything we were writing about just felt completely wrong. So I think from that perspective, we have massively altered what we've done. And I do think from that side, we've been able to get to know very different brands in the process. Writing about small businesses and supporting small businesses is something that I see everywhere now, which I don't think sort of existed before this.
Yeah.
That's not personal to me. I think that's across the board, which, loads of positives have come up. But I think for me and beauty, that the main thing that I'm finding is it's kind of shone a massive light on an industry that people who weren't interested in beauty seem to be more interested in. So they're under, people, well, I don't care about reading about beauty, but suddenly their roots and things that they didn't sort of put in beauty feels so relevant to them now. So I think beauty feels quite powerful at the moment. It's quite a positive that we're sort of talking to a bigger audience now, and even people who aren't able to work in salons. I've been quite wowed by how they've been creative in terms of coming up with ways to still talk to their consumer and to keep everyone engaged, and just a really creative way to do it.
Yeah,
I think just to quickly tap into what you're saying, Sarah, because I think this is what I find the most interesting. I think that people are starting to reevaluate what beauty really means. Mm-hmm. So I think that up until now, people might have looked at something like makeup as something that is for other people. So you're getting ready because you're going out and everybody else is going to see you, or something that's just a little bit vain. And I think that we work with one of our retailers is Violet Grey, and they've said that they've actually seen an influx in certain foundations and concealers. And it's almost a reminder that beauty is really a ritual, and it's a moment for yourself, and it impacts the way that you feel in that day. And I think, we're all under so much more stress, and we're having to sort of question things that we never thought we would have to question. And these sort of like everyday rituals that we're used to are keeping us grounded in many ways.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think you kind of said it earlier, with health being more of a focus right now, where it's, I think that reigns into not just, like you're saying, Sarah, as well. It's like connecting to what you're purchasing and having it feel more of a ritual, or having it feel more of an interaction with yourself. And I think that's really kind of where everyone is sort of focusing right now, because in a big way you have to. And it's, us all having to stay home and having to look at yourself only in the mirror, or connect with what you're cooking, or how you're feeding yourself, or the vitamins you're taking, or the products you're using on your skin, wanting to feel connected to the story and wanting to feel connected to who's behind it as well. I think that's also becoming a more powerful thing too, which I feel grateful for, because I think that there's going to be some sort of shift that's happening right now. It's already sort of been happening, and I think now it's moving into the spectrum of consumers relating to what capitalism really means. And if you're going to put your dollar towards something, wanting each dollar to kind of in a way feel like a vote towards what you want your future to feel like. And I think that's a big reason why, there's so many small businesses that are being highlighted right now. There's so many, unheard brands that are a little bit more founder made, or whatever the case is. I think that's really starting to shine, and I'm really grateful for it, not only because I'm biased and I am one of those people, but also because as a consumer, I want to know that I'm supporting something that I believe in.
Yeah.
I mean, actually communication is something that is, been discussed a lot at the moment, because, there are people delaying product launches and things like that. It seems almost insensitive to talk about certain products and very appropriate to talk about other products. Sarah, going back to you, how should beauty brands be approaching marketing new products at the moment? I mean, we're sort of, as we've discussed a little bit, moving away from the idea of beauty and more of sort of self-care as more appropriate.
Well, I think there's probably a couple of ways to look at it. So I don't think anyone should feel ashamed to launch a lipstick if that's what they're launching at the moment. I think it's all about telling a truthful story. It's, that storytelling of what feels really honest, to me, is what sort of stands out during these times. So anytime, anything you're launching at the moment, I always say, as in my job, I get a lot of press releases of things coming in. And when it's like your Saturday night your big night out makeup look, or like your holiday travel essentials. I just want to like help them, because wrong time to send me a travel essentials press release. Find a new way to do it, like, and that's what I say to brands, like, try and sort of look at your timeline of the story that you're telling and make sure it fits in with what we're doing, whether it's this or the next thing that we go through, or, you know, it's got to feel relevant and it's got to feel right. And I think I find at the moment the things that I'm sort of drawn to and drawn to talk about and write about are brands and products that just have a very authentic and real story to tell. So be honest, say we're not able to launch X because of Y, but what we do want to do is stop making this and help by launching that. So just be, you know, tell the story of why you're doing it and the reasons behind it and the messaging behind it, because I think not only does it make me, you know, it gives me a desire to share that story, but I genuinely think the reader isn't just wanting to quickly buy something. They also want to know. So I did like a big thing on my Instagram stories where it was all the small businesses to support. And when I clicked on and it was like 490 swipe ups to them, it's so exciting to see. And then you know, I think there's a lot of pay it forward in the beauty industry at the moment, that we all want to see the effect that we can have to help each other. So I think communication is everything, but it's being very, very careful and clear with what your message is at this moment.
Is there anyone that's doing it particularly well that you've seen as, you know, you've been very impressed with? To put you on the spot.
Yes, Josh. Go to someone else. Come back to me with that.
I'll come back. I will. Jules, how are you guys, like you touched upon it a little bit earlier, like how are you guys changing your message to your audience? Have you sort of refocused on a certain subject, or?
Not at all, actually, and it's kind of funny that this has all happened now, because I've always been very passionate about merging the idea of obviously inner and outer beauty, but physical and mental health as one. And so these are obviously topics that are very sort of hot on the agenda at the moment. We actually ran a mental health awareness campaign in New York in September called How Are You Really? And the billboard is still up. It's in the middle of Soho. And it literally is just a black and white that just says, How Are You Really? The Nuco. And so it's... I
saw it on Instagram the other day. That's great. Yeah, saw that.
I mean, it's so funny because when we first came up with the campaign, I mean, we've got some amazing investors around the table, but we've got a lot of strategics, and they can be fairly traditional in their approach. And, you know, it was similar to like when we decided to launch a fragrance alongside our probiotic. We always have people around the table going, are you sure? And so when we wanted to talk about mental health, you know, and really sort of be the supplement brand that really gets behind concepts around mental health and beauty, there were a couple of question marks, but you know, I think it was like Governor Cuomo actually quoted that exact line in his briefing last week. And I know a couple of other brands are doing initiatives that are really similar. So I think in terms of our brand message, it hasn't changed, because that is what health is. We are a health brand, and health is encompassing of all of those things. And I think that the next step from here is thinking about healthy hygiene. I know we've all started to go absolutely crazy with the hand sanitizers, and we're sort of like dousing ourselves in chemicals, and very rightly so, because we're obviously going through a crisis. But I think in time we're going to start thinking about what these chemicals are actually doing to our immune system, and what these chemicals are actually going to be doing to our general health. But yeah, like I said, we're sort of fortunate that we haven't had to really do a detour in terms of our brand messaging.
Gloria, I know your messaging generally ties into what Jules was just saying. Has it shifted dramatically during this period?
I feel like I have a lot of parallels with Jules in that sense, because it's always about like the truth behind what you're doing in general. And for us, it's obviously clean cosmetics and the inclusivity within that space. So our message has always been a very honest, real, and sometimes controversial one in some cases. And so for me, the only way that I feel like we've shifted our voice is being a little bit more gentle, being a little bit more considerate, and consider it based off of what's happening right now, and being more helpful to questions that people might have around new questions that are emerging. So we haven't, like you, Jules, we haven't had to really change anything about what we were doing in the past, but maybe there's some additions that have happened as far as like new questions, like I said, new questions that people are asking, or new inquiries, or new information that's coming about, you know, being more informative about our product and having it be more useful in that way, so people really understand what, for example, a wash would do for your hands, or why you may need something that's gentle while also, you know, removing, you know, bacteria, or whatever the case is. But no, I feel that thankfully the voice of what my company has always been something that it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. It's always something that's important and useful in those ways. And another, you know, I feel really grateful that I do have the company that I have, and that it's more than just a lipstick, or it's more than just something to make you look pretty, but it's also something that actually helps you feel good, that helps you bring joy in your daily ritual and what have you. So that has been something that I've been really grateful for. My choices, as far as kind of, Sarah, like you said, having an authentic voice. I feel like whenever you have an authentic voice and it's personal, or it's real, or it's honest, and it's not about the noise that you hear, it's not about the trends that you hear, when it's truly authentic, I think that's when you can fall back on wherever the economy is, wherever the world is. You always have that voice, and you maybe won't have to change it as much because it is real and it's yours.
Amazing. And Giorgia, for you, it's a slightly different story, because your community, I'm sure, is always very grateful for your product, and how to keep them engaged at this point has it been challenging?
Yeah, I mean, the web of communication for us has been, I think, led by some guiding principles. And the first was, we've chosen to over communicate rather than under communicate. So what our partners have gone through, they've never gone through this before. We also, I mean, think of us on the consumer side as a business that essentially had to cancel millions of orders, right? Because we within an hour, when a government would say the industry is closing down on Monday, we would cancel and refund millions of appointments. And so we in many ways became this customer service organization, right? Where we had to be very, very, you know, what is the message we want to send here? How are we going to deliver that? How are we going to execute on that very, very quickly? And then once that happened, once we moved into this like dormant mode, what did our message want to be to the partners? Like, we're going to get you back on your feet when it's safe and healthy to do so. And here's how we're going to support you in rebuilding. And then on the customer side, it was, you know, we've done a little bit of the roots growing out, but we've also done a lot of the showcasing of the small businesses. So the beauty industry is so fragmented. You know, you've got these mom and pop shops, these single, in many cases, owner operated partners who may find it difficult to create visibility over their plight, but actually, you know, the entire salon industry is going through the same thing at the moment, which is wondering how they're going to reopen their doors, wondering how they're going to rebuild. And so we've found that as a brand, that when we've erred on the side of the partners and showcasing their problems, their hopes, why they're excited to see their customers again, and you know, can only communicate with people so much. And so really choosing what message we wanted to send and when, and thinking about those phases on timelines that were not in our control has been a challenge, but also an opportunity for us to support the industry who wouldn't have been able to do it by themselves.
We will have a lot of salon owners who tune into this and watch. And we're starting to see retail opening up in some states in the US and countries around Europe, and you guys have a big presence in Europe as well. Can you share any of the trends that you're seeing on behalf of, you know, the salons and service providers that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I assume there's a lot of UK based partners on the line who are still in lockdown. And so we've now had the experience of opening up 9 of our 11 markets. And my message is, if you can hang in there, hang in there. So that would be my first thing. There is light on the other side. So when we open up industries, and we have a decent sort of share of the overall market size, right? Like a very high percentage of all beauty bookings come through us at this point. And we are having record days every time we open. And when we open industries for partners who are able to reopen on the other side, they are fully booked out. And so we've got, we share stories in our team internally of like a hair salon in Paris who opened at 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. and they were booked out 5, 6, 7 a.m. for weeks. And so I guess our message is these aren't ordinary times, and the outlook on the other side is spotty, right? We don't know what the overall size of the hair and beauty wallet will look like, because it's not just a pandemic at this point as well, right? Like this is going to be the biggest economic contraction of our lifetime. And we all as brands need to think about what that's going to do to the overall size of beauty spend. But there are ways as a salon that you can think about your opening hours, that you can think about your prices, that you can think about your team, that you can think about the menu of services that you offer that make the most of that tsunami of demand that we are seeing and that I'm sure will come in the UK, and thinking about how to preserve cash flow. Like we've all learned as businesses, and Treatwell is no exception, that cash flow is king. And we want the industry to be able to manage that, not in the weeks, but in the months that come through. And so they are going to need to think about doing things differently, but it's an opportunity.
For sure. I mean, Gloria, you've just opened a store, obviously. And I'm sort of interested to hear your perspective on what the role of the beauty store will be. I mean, if you assume, that we might have to completely rethink stores, maybe you think it's just a pause. I think I know how you feel, but, what is the role of the beauty store for the future?
I mean, I guess I can really only speak to my experience. And as a consumer that has shopped at a beauty store, it may become a little bit more of a community space, and it might become a little bit more of a neighborhood space, because I feel that the ones that will venture into a beauty store will be probably localized to that neighborhood and want to consider, I'm going to go up the street for my one outing of the week, go to the grocery store and maybe go grab my beauty supplies at, my neighborhood store. I'm thinking about these places also being in maybe, larger cities like in Paris or in New York or in London. And I don't anticipate it being, like it used to be, or in the sense where it's like, oh, I'm going to go into the beauty store and try a bunch of product and like play on a bunch of things. It's going to be probably a little bit more like, I already know what I need to get and I need to go in and grab it. However, I do think that there is the opportunity to still engage with your customer and still create an atmosphere with them. It's just going to be a very different experience, especially when it comes to testing product, when the customer comes in and wants to try product. For example, for us, we're considering what that looks like, and you're going to have to be masked when you walk in. You're going to have to sanitize your hands when you walk in. So how do you then like take that experience of like a high stress level situation and then maybe bring it back into a more enjoyable, relaxed situation? Mm-hmm. Is that creating testers that you give your customer that comes in and that's how they're testing the product? Or are you creating a palette just for them that has a few swatches on it? So yeah, I think it's just going to have to, I personally think it's going to become a little bit more, like I said, localized. Everything's going to become a little bit more localized. Your customer is probably going to be local. They're probably not going to be traveling too far because they're probably just going to order it online if they can, if they're coming from a distance. But I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of trial and error that's going to happen over these next few weeks and months and year for us to really figure out what that looks like. I think it also depends on what kind of store you're going into. Is a Sephora going to be different than a Noto Botanics in, Highland Park, LA? So I think that it's also going to be a situation where you really kind of, I don't think that it's all going to be the same. I think it's going to have to really truly, how does it work within your your operation, your community, your customer. I think, Giorgia, you might be able to relate to that, knowing you work with so many different salons and different small businesses, and they each have their own way of doing things too, while also still all being a salon. It's still very personal in their experience. And maybe experiences would become a little bit more personalized, a little bit more connected, as opposed to like so broad.
We've had so many amazing stories of customers connecting with their business, with their local businesses. So like, if I can just share one example, we had a salon in Amsterdam that was looking to need to go out of business. And one of her regular nail clients, an 83-year-old woman, found out and paid for her rent. Was just like, I'm just going to let me support you. And I think that we are seeing I think this is such an acceleration of so many trends, right? Online was already happening. This is being accelerated. I think that, going local is being accelerated. But one of the ones that maybe it's slower is like this connection between a business owner or the person who's in the store and the customer being this amazing elevated community experience. And what does that connection mean? And it's so much more than the service or the product. It's the whole, it's everything that online isn't, and it's elevated. And I think that that's, for all of us, a positive thing, and for customers as well.
I agree with you. And if I can bounce back in on that, one of the reasons why I opened the store, despite so many people questioning it or asking like, isn't retail dead or isn't it dying? I don't think that the human experience will hopefully ever die, or the desire to connect in real life will ever die. And I personally want to, it may not expand to the degree of what it ever was, but I would like to hope that there's still movements that create that experience. And walking into my store today, I haven't spent much time in my store as the lockdown has happened, partially because it's broken my heart to walk into a space that I've put so much, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life was open a store. And one of the most gratifying things was to open a store space. But it's been really hard for me to walk into the store being closed right after we opened it. But coming in today, before I started talking with you all, I have actually chills right now thinking about it, because of just the feeling that it gave me to walk into this space. I feel like I've been so deprived as a human being, being able to walk into a space and see something beautiful and see something different from my everyday, and just feel it and look at it. And I want to believe that I'm going to do whatever it takes to continue that experience. And if it's just my own little bubble and the rest of the world doesn't, that's fine. Whatever the case is, I really truly think that as human beings, we have these innate desires to do things like this and to connect with people on these levels. And I would like to believe that, like you said, Giorgia, as part of the online world exploding and continuing to expand, I'd like to believe that this human experience is now a new regenerating thing that's happening that people want to connect to.
I was just going to say that I think this is actually going to be what people are most hungry for. Mm-hmm. So when we first went into lockdown, I think the thing that affected me the most was the fact that I couldn't go to my local coffee shop and just get a coffee. And so what's happening now in London is you can do that, but it's a rollout of things that I'm expecting to see in America shortly. So there's a human contact, you can say hello, how are you, you can have an exchange, but it's just all done through a glass window essentially. But I can't believe how much that just small exchange improves your day. And so I think for us, I mean, we've had 3 retail stores, and we were due to open our first in London and then another permanent one in New York. And retail has always been the place of experience and community and events. And it really, for us, it's just been an extension of our marketing strategy rather than really a huge revenue driver. So I completely agree with, what you guys are saying. And Gloria, I'm so excited to see us sort of reimagine what that sort of what community really means, because it doesn't have to be a party of like 200 people. you know, it's that human connection. And I think what you've said about consumers getting behind purpose-led brands and that being kind of unwavering is so true. I think that we started to see it a year ago or 2 years ago, but I think that this is really going to spearhead that.
Amazing. So just shifting before we finish to the future and what that looks like. Sarah, this question is probably best for you first, which is that with everyone working from home, we're certainly going to be doing so a lot more coming forward as well. How will our approach to beauty and self-care adapt? Like, what are people looking for? What are the changing demands going to be?
It's really hard to say, Josh. I don't know. I mean, what are people, you know, I would love to say we're all going to stay on this like self-care wellness journey of like, you know, being our best selves, but does anything, I don't know. I think as soon as everything opens, everyone's going to flood out, and we're going to hope, I can only hope that we'll hold on to, you know, the slow, you know, the slow way of doing things. But I don't know. It's really hard for me to say. I mean, I manage a team of 4 of us, and we're all doing, you know, we're ultimately putting a magazine together from different homes every single week. And there's been some incredible things. And I think we've definitely found the power of, you know, wellness and the power of supporting each other and the power of community. So I can't tell you where it's going to go, but I can tell you that my hope is that beauty stays in a more, I'll say loving, in a more loving capacity than what it was before. Because I think before it was kind of just like it was a bit like fast fashion. It was fast beauty. Everything was quick. There was no time. There was, you know, walk through a cosmetics hall, do a quick swipe, don't like it, see something on Instagram, buy it in 1 second, don't think about it. Everything was just, there wasn't much thought. And I think we've become a lot more thoughtful in every element of our life. So I think if there's something I can hope for, we'll all be slightly more thoughtful how we approach beauty, and I guess values that you take into your diet, things you take into, you know, whether it's your religion, whatever it is. I don't think a lot of people put that into beauty. I think beauty feels a bit separate, and I think now people have had time to stop. And, you know, don't kill me, but I don't take supplements. I've never taken supplements. But I know Jules is going to kick me out. But, you know, I've been sitting at home being like, right, what are all the things I don't do? You know, and let's start doing it. I think that for me is where I hope beauty will go, is actually starting to look at the things that with a bit more depth and a bit more thoughtfulness.
Love that.
Sound all right?
Jules, what do you think? I mean, do you see positive moves for the future in the industry in general? I know you guys have headed that way for a while.
Yeah, I think that the 2 things that will really drive brands forwards, like I said, I think being a purpose-driven brand that's founded on a message of real integrity is what consumers will look for. And then the second one is really simple, but it's just making products that actually work. Like, we were really fortunate that, so our business is 80% online, and we've got a 70% repeat purchase rate. And that's really all we set out to prove, that we could make supplements that made people feel so much better that they just came back and bought them again and just use them every day. And so I think up until now, there's almost been this divide between, you're a brand that is amazing at marketing, but produces quite, like Sarah basically said, this idea of like fast beauty products, which are kind of throwaway products, or it's the other way around. So I think a bigger focus on efficacy and brands that people can really buy into.
Amazing. And Gloria, same question for you.
Yeah, I think what you guys what you both just said are very accurate. Sarah, I love your reference to beauty feeling like fast fashion in a lot of ways. I mean, the fashion industry is, I think, the leading or one of the main leading causes of environmental issues. And I don't think that beauty is too far behind that. I think in addition to, first of all, making a product that works, second of all, having an authentic and true story behind it, Sustainability is going to be considered a part of that as well. And it has to be, if things have to start being considered within that spectrum, if we want to move forward as a human race, in my personal opinion. So I would like to say that maybe in a lot of ways, this experience that we're dealing with is this acceleration to consider what sustainability means, and how we can begin to implement that within our businesses, whether that's becoming more localized, whether that's becoming more efficient with the tools we use, or the ingredients we use, or the packaging we use, whether that's holistically approaching how you run your business and how you train your team, whatever it is. I think sustainability is going to definitely become a huge point in where we start to shift things. And that's also a hope of mine, in addition to Sarah's hope of having people be more thoughtful in how we purchase. And that was kind of what I mentioned earlier, where in a way, my friend Celine, who has this company called Slow Factory, she's made a good point about, like I said earlier, you know, what you put your dollar towards kind of feels like a vote. And I think that kind of encompasses everything. It's a vote towards, does the product work? It's a vote towards, do you believe in the story? It's a vote towards, is it sustainable? And wherever you begin to put that, that's going to show culture what we're asking for. So my hope is that our consumer is thoughtful in all of those areas. And I think that that's where we are going in a lot of ways, because based off of the messages that I get from our customers, it sounds like they care about these things, which is exciting.
I'm gonna wrap up. We have like very, very short time for a couple of questions, but that was absolutely amazing. So thank you guys so much for that. There seems to be a trend, which is two questions I have, and I'll direct the first one, I think, to Giorgia, which is, what should, you know, if one owns a salon, if you know, people are operating salons, what should they be thinking about? If you have the answer, I don't know. In terms of sort of safeguarding that health and safety, is there advice that, you know, people have stores, beauty stores, there's things they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of three categories of advice, right? One is commercial. How should you run your business? How should you preserve cash? How should you think about making sure you can make it through the next few months of very spotty demand, and thinking about your opening hours, thinking about your team size, thinking about the menu you offer, thinking about the prices are all in that first category. And things aren't going to be the same. And so people need to do business differently. And we and many others are there to chat about any sort of commercial advice around that. I think the second one is health and safety and hygiene. And the beginning point there is that the hair and beauty industry has always had elevated health and safety measures, right? Like we ran a PPE drive in the UK where we helped some of our partners donate PPE equipment to the NHS, because so many of our partners had gloves and eye goggles and all the things that there was a shortage of. And so that won't change. But I think that our salon partners are thinking even more in an elevated way of, like, how do you leave the doors open? How do you encourage your nail clients not to bring jewelry in, or not to put their phone in at the beginning of the store? Like, really practical, pragmatic things that you can think about making your environment be perceived to be a lot more sort of health and safety conscious should be top of mind, because that will do the third thing, which is that people need to think about how to inspire trust and confidence. And so in the same way as every brand has to think about their messaging, partners and salon owners should be thinking about what they want to say to their customers to encourage them to come back through the doors, right? Because as soon as the government says that we're good to go sort of socially, as an individual business, you also want to communicate that you're good to go as well. And so we have sort of helped many of our partners think about marketing templates in our software, but you need to really think about that individual communication about how you want to encourage people to come back. And for most hair salons, and even things like barbers that used to do walk-ins, nail salons, in some countries, so in the Netherlands and Lithuania, the government is saying you need to take appointments now, which is a fundamentally different way of doing business. And I think we actually are doing a meeting tomorrow with some of the members of the UK Parliament to talk about the way that the hair and beauty industry reopens here. And there is a chance that the UK will move to be more appointment based. But again, that's an acceleration of a trend that we were already seeing, and that the industry is moving to both being appointment-based and taking those bookings online. I think anything you can do to strip out the worry in your business, and at this point it means embracing software, will give you time to think about the things that you should be thinking about, which is creating amazing human experiences, which is really, really delicate customer care and delivering a great product. So I think everything is new to think about, but the industry has been thinking about a lot of these things already. So it's not crazy.
And then the final question, thank you for that. The final question I have is actually you touched upon, which is about the messaging. Like, how is the messaging going to change? Is there, are you seeing a shift from, what was online marketing to maybe going through, Sarah, thought leaders like you, or, industry insiders in different times of promotion? What's the best way to message, you guys think?
That me or to anyone?
Yeah, it was to anyone, but I mean, you're probably seeing a lot of it. Like, are brands sort of coming out of the woodwork trying to tap you up more?
Well, I mean, well, I don't know if it's any more than usual. I think it's what I said earlier about messaging. I think it's just being conscious of what your message is, and yes, there are, but I think if anything, it's a really good time to kind of get your brand out there, because everybody has a bit more time to read up more and learn more. And, I find myself doing more research and having more time to really get to know new brands and understand the brand's messaging. I do think also your online presence now is the most important thing that you could possibly go for, because people who are normally out having dinners and out, taking kids to school, that everybody is at home, which means more and more people are on their phone. I'd guess more and more people are on their phone. So, whether it is your social media account, whether it is your online, just really think about how you can engage with your consumer, your dream consumer. I've done quite a lot of Instagram content with brands and with, those sorts of people who are, in terms of just, I think it's just sort of talking directly to that person who you normally are hoping would go into your store. So use everything you've got now. Don't basically sit around and wait until things go back, because it's probably never going to go back to what you knew. So start working with what we've got now and try and be as proactive as you possibly can.
Amazing.
I think oh, sorry, Josh, go on.
No, go on. If you wanted to add something, Jules, please.
I mean, people might just find this interesting if this is something that they've been considering for a while, but we did actually evaluate our sort of media mix when this first happened. So much like almost every company, we basically went into a contingency plan focus. So we actually turned off all of our paid social. And that wasn't a huge issue for us, because actually about 70% of our revenue comes from those organic channels. So we invest quite heavily in out of home, email, influencers. So we did that for the first month, and actually it made absolutely no difference to our revenue numbers. We actually surpassed what we were hoping to achieve. Having said that, we actually then turned on paid social last month, and because so many people took that approach, and we know that so many big companies have obviously just had to turn off all of their spend because they obviously have no business, it's actually become a channel that is really, really performing for us. Our ROAS have essentially doubled. So I think it's really a time to just look at all of your channel mix, think about where you can test and how much money really you can allocate towards the test, because it might be an opportunity.
Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Honestly, it was an honor to have all of you guys with us, and I know that our community would have found that incredibly useful. For all of you guys that are still watching that need help with anything else, up here running the hotline, which helps brands and founders and decision makers make decisions during this crazy time. So reach out to us. We're always here to help. Thank you guys so much again for joining us, and we really appreciate it. And we'll be seeding this out to everyone from social media and email. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone.
Bye.
What's left of the sun?
Bye, everyone.
Bye.